From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez and this is From the South. No importa, lo leo de la tablet. Vamos. Investigations continue at the Santander Police School in Bogota, Colombia, to determine the motives behind Thursday's bomb attack. The Attorney General and the Defense Minister held a news conference. They spoke of an arrest of a suspect during the early morning hours and have accused the ELN of having responsibility. The ELN has yet to make a statement, but has unofficially denied that it ordered the attack. At least 21 people were killed and 65 wounded in this attack. Our correspondent in Bogota, Tatiana Portela, has the latest.
Well, there are still a lot of investigators at the police academy searching for evidence. Just minutes ago, a news conference was held by Attorney General Nestor Humberto Martinez, Defense Minister Guillermo Botero, and the High Commissioner for Peace, Miguel Zaballos. They said that early this morning, authorities captured a person identified as Ricardo Andres Carbaja. The 32-year-old was arrested at his home in the south of the country. Authorities say he was identified as being involved in the explosion while he was communicating by phone with the accused bomber, Jose Aldemar. Aldemar was identified yesterday as the person who was inside the Nissan when it entered the police school and crashed into a room. The Attorney General today alleged that the ELN army was involved, but the group has not claimed responsibility. We are waiting for an official communique from the Central Command of the ELN denying or accepting the participation in that attack. And finally, we must say that after some journalists asked if Venezuela financed the attack, the Attorney General said that right now they are only asking the Venezuelan government to verify the presence in Venezuelan territory of, quote, several guerrilla commanders of the National Liberation Army, end quote. However, they emphasize that they have not found anything linking Venezuela's government to this incident.
On Thursday, the Inter-American Court for Human Rights condemned Colombia for false flag operations, or also known as false positives. The verdict referred to a specific case of 6 young men who the Colombian army murdered and then presented as guerrillas killed in combat. It is the first time that an international court has recognized this practice of false positives. Human rights groups accuse the Colombian military of using it systematically from 2002. President Ivan Duque visited the school where the attack took place and spoke about the next actions.
This attack has taken place in a school where there are young and unarmed students. This attack did not only target our security forces, our youth, our police. It is an attack against the Colombian people. This terrorist attack will be punished. We, Colombians, have never surrendered to terrorism.
And Duque declared 3 days of national mourning. In a news conference, he also announced that he ordered tighter control over Colombian borders, as well as over access points to several cities. And members of the FARC political party in Congress are speaking out against violence. Roy Barreras, a member of the Peace Commission at the Senate, also condemned the attack.
We regret the evil attack against our police that has cost several human lives. Any terrorist attack is a cowardly act. We want to express our solidarity with the victims. We hope to arrest those responsible and that we don't fall into a spiral of violence like the one we suffered in the conflict 20 years ago.
Following this bomb attack, Colombian students and other social movements suspended their planned protests. The students had called their march to demand the dismantling of the ESMAD riot squad. They accused it of using extreme violence against the student demonstrations last year. They also want more funding for universities. Other movements are calling for the resignation of the Attorney General. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza sat down with Democracy Now! And spoke about the U.S. government's role in opposing the government of President Nicolás Maduro.
They are trying to push a political conflict in Venezuela. They are calling the armed forces to make pronunciations against President Maduro. That's what they want, a coup d'etat in Venezuela. They want a war in Venezuela, and it's not going to happen. We are really trying to build a democracy rooted in the people, and that is what they don't like, because that is not what they would like from the countries of Latin America.
During the interview, Arreaza also talked about the impact of the U.S. sanctions on the country.
The Venezuelan people are suffering because of these so-called sanctions, which are coercive, unilateral measures. This is not approved by the United Nations Security Council. It has no legality. These are decisions taken by one government unilaterally to impose a blockade against Venezuela, so it's difficult for us to import food, to import medicine.
We have more stories coming up. We'll be back. Welcome back. In Jamaica, a tanker truck carrying highly flammable gas exploded along the main road in St. James. The driver has been seriously injured and remains hospitalized. The blaze also caused damage to sections of the nearby electricity infrastructure, and the cause is not yet known. The Botham Jean murder trial is set to resume soon after the necessary paperwork was filed. Former Dallas police officer Amber Geiger attended her first procedural hearing roughly 1 week ago. The U.S. judge overseeing the trial has issued a gag order. It prevents attorneys in the case from speaking publicly about the slaying of the St. Lucian national. Geiger shot and killed Jean in his own apartment last September. She says she mistook the apartment for her own and thought he was an intruder.
That will call upon your name.
A new political party is on the horizon in Barbados, and its opposition leader, Bishop Joseph Atherley, who's expected to head that new political entity. Atherley, who is a former member of the ruling Barbados Labour Party, has confirmed the development. At a recent press conference, he was joined by a former candidate of the United Progressive Party, one of the contesting parties in last year's general election.
It's definitely not a repudiation of the Barbados Labour Party.
Puerto Ricans protested against a deal created by the government to tackle the island's growing public debt.
Hundreds of people gathered in front of the federal court, which prompted police to close a section of the Chardon Avenue. Spokespeople for various social organizations present at the event hailed the demonstration as a success.
What the United States is doing to Puerto Rico is too intense. It is just too much when we face debt, a fiscal control board, and the whole federal court. We look at the damage it will cause if what they propose is carried out. We have had 40 years to pay debt, and it will definitely eliminate the possibility of Puerto Rico becoming a free and sovereign nation.
Was the federal judge responsible for restructuring the Puerto Rico debt evaluated whether they would ratify the agreement between the government and COFINA creditors, protesters outside the court condemned the deal and its consequences for the people of Puerto Rico.
This is real resistance, in which one action comes after another. People are seeing their family and friends on the street protesting for the first time. People are waking up to how the deeds of the junta and the colonial system have affected their lives, pockets, and future opportunities.
This clearly shows how what is happening in the country is completely ignored. There's misinformation. More than 200,000 people are affected by these agreements. All sectors are going to be harmed: teachers, students, police.
Independence activist Salvador Tio has strongly criticized the U.S. measures against Puerto Rico. He says there's a hidden geopolitical interest for controlling other Caribbean regions and Latin America, especially Venezuela.
Puerto Rico is realizing that colonialism impoverishes you. They say that there is a dictatorship in Venezuela, even though the president was elected by a majority of 4 million. Here, there is a fiscal control board that is deciding the next 40 to 50 years of pensions, universities and schools. that nobody voted for. Which one is the dictatorship? It's a dictatorship of the United States. And that's why what's happening is important for Venezuela, aside from us being Latino brothers, as with the Cubans and Dominicans. The United States is setting foot in the Caribbean, into Puerto Rico, so that they can have a frontier from which they can prepare troops to overthrow the elected and constitutional government of Nicolas Maduro.
As part of the demonstration, civic, political and social organizations prepared pamphlets to explain how these agreements about the Puerto Rico debt are designed to benefit the United States and the members of Fiscal Control Board.
In other news, around 200 people from the latest group of asylum seekers from Central America reached the Mexican border on Thursday. The group entered southwest Mexico around midday and are headed for the United States. According to Guatemalan authorities, 2,000 people are taking part in this caravan, which departed from Honduras on Tuesday. And a reported 100 people in the caravan were given a bracelet allowing them entry into Mexico. They allow them free movement and to work within Mexico. According to migration authorities, 601 bracelets have already been put on members of the migrant caravan.
I thank the Mexican government, which has helped us Hondurans every step of the way, offered us a card to remain in the country of Mexico for a year.
The mission I have with my son is to get to the United States, but let's see how things go.
Our correspondent in Guatemala, Mario Rosales, has more details.
Here in Guatemala, hundreds of Hondurans have passed the border through the western department of San Marcos up to the southern state of Chiapas. In the early morning hours of Friday, an unknown number of Hondurans were seen walking crossing the border in a very orderly fashion. This markedly different from what we witnessed in October 2018 with the very first large caravan. We recall the exclusive footage presented by Telesur of the helicopters which the government of Enrique Peña Nieto flew over the Suchiate River and circled around in provocation. Central American migrants could have drowned in that river, but eventually crossed in an orderly fashion. The Interior Minister has provided centers for migrants to identify themselves. Here in Guatemala, migrants continue arriving to the capital and to what's called the Migrant House to join the large group which has already made it into the Mexican territory on its journey to the United States.
That was Mario Rosales from Guatemala City. U.S. authorities may have separated thousands more migrant children from their families than previously reported. That's according to a report released Thursday by the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. In December 2018, U.S. authorities said a total of 2,737 kids had been separated, but the new report says the real number is likely much higher. It says that in the summer of 2017, officials observed a large increase in the number of separated children and that they were not counted in the official total. In Mexico, the number of disappeared is now more than 40,000, and the number of unidentified dead is more than 36,000. This is according to Roberto Cabrera, leader of the National Search Commission. Cabrera made the announcement as he resigned from the position. The commission was created a year ago along with a new database called the National Registry of Missing and Non-Located People. It contains digital records of the victims, including their full names, photographs and fingerprints. Salvadorans have marked 27 years since a peace agreement was signed in Mexico, ending its long-lasting civil war.
Hundreds of Salvadorans attended the commemoration of the signing of the peace deal that ended 12 years of armed conflict in the country, which left thousands dead and missing. Diplomats from countries that supported the peace negotiations also attended the event.
That day, on January 16, 1992, we ended decades of repression and pain. We left behind an era marked by a cruel dictatorship that sought to silence people with violent and inhumane methods. Today, we honor the legacy of the peace pact that allows us to enjoy a better today and look into the future with both hope and optimism.
The celebration was meant to reaffirm the commitment of all Salvadorans to democracy, peace, progress, and development.
We already have the guarantee for people to fully exercise their rights, the freedom to have opinions, to decide, to organize, to build any project. This is important for the thousands who fought and died for these values. They didn't die for nothing, and it is for coming generations who aspire to build a more democratic future.
In a festive mood, songs were performed in honor of the peace achieved 27 years ago, and they celebrated the creation of a new, more advanced democracy.
To become a country that is permanently built on democratic values. That is what we, Salvadoran people, wish from the depths of our hearts. We are people who suffered a lot to build democracy. It cost us 100,000 lives and the destruction of the productive infrastructure of the country.
With the support of the United Nations, many sectors of Salvadoran society seek to bring a second generation of agreements that will tackle the new economic and social challenges the country is currently facing.
Press TV news presenter Marcia Hashemi, who has been imprisoned by the FBI on unspecified charges, is due to appear in court on Friday. The 59-year-old U.S. citizen, who is based in Iran, was detained as a material witness to a criminal case, and according to her eldest son, no charges were presented against her. Hashemi's son says that he and his siblings had also received subpoenas to appear before a grand jury in Washington, D.C. Renowned Argentine activist Hebe de Bonafini, a co-founder of the Mothers of Plaza de Mayo, spoke about the TV anchor's arrest. She says the journalist's popularity will only grow after her eventual release.
There have always been women activists with a cause, and I think that this is the reason for Marcia Hashemi's incarceration, and that's why all women should fight for her freedom. There is always a cost for freedom, and sometimes you should know how to pay for it. I believe that she'll be even more revered after her release, and that's what those who have imprisoned her don't understand.
The National Museum of Brazil in Rio de Janeiro has launched its first exhibition since the devastating fire in September. The exhibition on new discoveries in Antarctica is being held at the original site of the National Museum. The exhibition features 160 pieces of Antarctic rocks and fossils, including pieces that were salvaged from the fire. September's fire destroyed the vast majority of the over 20 million objects at the museum.
Researchers of the museum are doing everything possible to resume their work. We just wish to let people know that the National Museum is still in operation and continuing to play its role.
We're taking one last break, but stay with us. Welcome back. The government of the Democratic Republic of Congo has rejected a call by the African Union to suspend results from December's elections. At a meeting in Ethiopia, African leaders expressed serious concerns about the reliability of the results.
Although the situation on the ground has fortunately remained generally calm so far, it is highly worrying. To put it bluntly, serious doubts about the conformity of the results proclaimed persist and continue to haunt the minds of Congolese and their brothers and friends around the world.
Meanwhile, the chairperson of the African Union, Paul Kagame, has said the comments made by foreign observers and governments have worsened the post-electoral tensions. Kagame said that outsiders must stop interfering and give the African Union a chance to find a long-lasting solution to the crisis. The meeting was attended by 16 African leaders. A spokesperson for the opposition candidate Felix Tshisekedi also condemned interference by the African Union. Provisional results from the Electoral Court put Tshisekedi as the winner of the election.
Rather than waiting for the court's ruling, it's now the African Union that's telling the court not to rule. So we find it scandalous. There's no legal basis for this, from an international or domestic point of view.
Our correspondent in Pretoria, Matuba Matlaji, has more.
The Southern African Development Community leaders have met on Thursday in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to try and find a political solution for DRC, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, after the December 30th election. South Africa will be one of the member states attending that meeting, and they have made it clear that they will support a call for a recount of that vote. And this was also a call that was made by opposition candidate Martin Fayulu to court, and it's now sitting in front of a bench of 9 judges, and they are yet to make a pronouncement on that call. Now, this election was supposed to have been a first transition of democracy since Joseph Kabila took over from his father. But now, if there is a delay of a government in Kinshasa, many challenges that that country already face will deepen. These are challenges like the Ebola outbreak, which we now know that it has been the second biggest in history. And there's also fighting of militia in North Kivu and in the northern part regions of that country. Now all eyes will be on Ethiopia, or that meeting that's taking place in Addis Ababa, for a permanent solution for the people of the DRC. It's back to you.
Matuba Madlaje from South Africa. In other news, protesters clashed with security forces in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, and 3 other cities on Thursday. Protesters are demanding that President Omar al-Bashir step down. They threw stones at police and burned tires during the demonstrations. Reports say a doctor and a child were killed during the unrest. The protests began in December, triggered by price hikes and cash shortages, after the country lost 3/4 of its oil output. Business owners in Nairobi, Kenya have closed their doors in solidarity with the victims of the hotel terror attack. They have decided to shut down operations for 1 day, to stand with the victims and to condemn the jihadist terrorist group Al-Shabaab. The group has targeted Kenya since the country sent its army into Somalia in October 2011.
This hub, led by the Isli business community and the area leaders, have decided to close shops today in solidarity with the victims of the Riverside attack. It was a barbaric attack, and it's a condemnation of that attack.
Meanwhile, Kenyan citizens have turned out to donate blood for the victims of the Nairobi hotel complex, the terrorist attack which claimed 21 lives and left many others injured. 2 people have been arrested in connection with Tuesday's attack in the hotel in Kenya. The Police Inspector General Joseph Boynet informed media that 3 victims have yet to be identified and that 5 of the attackers had been eliminated. He also provided a revised number of people killed, bringing the total to 21. He said the new bodies have now been retrieved from the scene of the attack.
In subsequent investigations by the DCI, we have arrested 2 individuals whom we have very strong reasons to believe facilitated the attack and are in our custody, assisting the police with the investigations.
Media representatives in Ghana are condemning the killing of an investigative journalist that helped uncover corruption cases in football. During the press conference, a fellow journalist demonstrated against the silencing of his colleague by covering his face with a mop. Ahmed Hussein Suale was shot 3 times by men on motorbikes while driving home from work on Wednesday in Accra. Hussein Suale was part of a team that produced a documentary exposing 77 referees and revealed that Ghana's soccer chief had received bribes.
We also appeal to His Excellency the President, Nadu Dankwa Akufo-Addo, as the head of the executive arm of government, to take personal interests in seeing to the bottom of this matter. Furthermore, we call on Parliament as representatives of the people to take the necessary actions that would instill a sense of safety, not only in the media, but also among the general populace of Ghana. We also urge the judiciary to deal mercilessly with anyone found guilty of such heinous crimes.
Zimbabwean pastor and activist Ewan Mawarire appeared in court Thursday on charges of subverting the government. Mawarire is accused of inciting violence and urging people to engage in an unlawful protest. He faces a 20-year sentence if convicted. This comes after violent-fueled protests in the southern African country this week left 3 dead and dozens more injured.
We thought we had a new country and a new way of doing things. None of what I am being accused of is what I have done at all. I did nothing of the nature. But if we have true justice in this country, then let's see it at play.
With that, we come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, we are on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And we're on social media as well. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.